My parents always forgot to tell me when the family was meeting because I didn't fit their perfect image. I discovered this when my sister accidentally sent me a screenshot of the family WhatsApp group where my mother wrote, "Don't tell Sarah about Sunday's barbecue. She'll bring that tattooed boyfriend again." I showed up at the barbecue unannounced, with my boyfriend and his 5-year-old daughter, right when my mother was telling Aunt Helen how hard it was to have a problematic daughter. The words died in her throat. 20 pairs of eyes turned toward the gate where I stood, Marcus's hand in mine, little Emma clutching her stuffed rabbit. My mother's champagne flute froze halfway to her lips. The color drained from her face like someone had pulled a plug. Aunt Helen's mouth formed a perfect O. My father dropped his spatula onto the pristine patio stones. The silence was so complete I could hear the neighbors' wind chimes 3 houses down. My mother recovered first, always the performer. She plastered on that country club smile, the one that never reached her eyes. "Sarah, what a surprise!" Her voice climbed half an octave. "We thought you were working today." She shot a venomous glance at my sister Jessica, who had turned the color of old newspaper and was frantically scrolling through her phone. My mother moved to block Aunt Helen's view of Marcus, positioning herself like a human shield. But I saw the way her gaze raked over his tattoo sleeves, the snake of disgust that crossed her features before she masked it. Emma pressed closer to Marcus's leg, sensing the hostility crackling through the air like static electricity. I was the family disappointment, the one who chose art school over law, who worked at a tattoo parlor instead of a corporate office, who dated a single father with ink covering his arms instead of the investment bankers my mother paraded past me at every opportunity. For 3 years, I'd watched my mother's carefully curated Facebook page, my sister Jessica's engagement photos, my brother David's promotion announcements, family gatherings I learned about secondhand. I was cropped out of their perfect picture, airbrushed from their narrative. But my mother had made one critical mistake when she decided I was expendable. She'd forgotten that I'd spent every summer of my childhood at my grandmother's law firm, learning exactly how these things worked. And 6 months ago, Grandma Rose had given me something more valuable than their approval. She'd given me power. They just didn't know it yet. The backyard was a stage set for their performance of perfection. White linen tablecloths fluttered in the June breeze. Catered appetizers arranged in geometric precision. My father's prized rose bushes formed a backdrop like they'd been positioned by a magazine photographer. Jessica wore a cream sundress that probably cost more than my rent. David stood near the grill with his wife Amanda, both of them frozen like mannequins. My mother's book club friends clustered near the pergola, vultures in designer sunglasses. They'd been feeding on my reputation for years. Poor Barbara Mitchell. Such a lovely woman. What went wrong with that youngest daughter? "Actually, Mom, I came specifically for this." I walked forward, my combat boots leaving prints on her perfect lawn. Marcus stayed close, Emma's small hand now in his. I thought it was time we had a family conversation, a real one. My mother's smile turned brittle. "Well, this isn't really the time." "It's perfect timing." I set my bag on the appetizer table. Mrs. Henderson's hand-blown wine glasses tinkled together. "Because everyone's here. The whole family." I emphasized the word like a weapon. "Plus your friends. The ones you tell about your problematic daughter." Jessica made a small sound, something between a gasp and a whimper. My father had gone completely still, his face unreadable. "I don't know what you're talking about." My mother's knuckles were white around her champagne flute. "This is hardly appropriate." Appropriate. I tasted the word. "That's always been your favorite, hasn't it? What's appropriate? What fits the image?" I pulled out my phone, pulled up the screenshot. "Is it appropriate to have a secret family group chat specifically to exclude one of your children? Is that in the etiquette books you're always reading?" The faces around me shifted. Confusion, curiosity. The first cracks in my mother's carefully maintained facade. Aunt Helen leaned forward, predatory interest sharpening her features. My mother laughed, high and false. "Sarah, you're being dramatic. We sometimes forget to add you, that's all. You're always so busy. Don't tell Sarah about Sunday's barbecue. She'll bring that tattooed boyfriend again." I read the words clearly. Let them hang in the perfumed air. Direct quote from you, Mom. March 15th. Easter was March 17th that year. You forgot to tell me about Easter. The silence that followed had teeth. Mrs. Henderson's eyebrows climbed toward her hairline. David had the grace to look uncomfortable. Jessica was crying silently, mascara tracking down her cheeks. But my mother's expression hardened. shifted into something cold and calculating. If you felt excluded, you should have spoken to us privately. Her voice could have cut glass, not ambush us at a family gathering. This is exactly the kind of behavior that makes me problematic. I finished for her. The kind that embarrasses you? I felt Marcus's presence behind me, solid and unwavering. Emma was watching everything with those big eyes that saw too much for 5 years old. Or is it that I'm not performing the right life? Not marrying rich? Not joining the country club? You made your choices. My father spoke for the first time, his voice heavy. We've respected that. Respected it? You erased me. The words came out harder than I'd planned. 3 years of holidays I found out about on Instagram. 3 years of being the family secret. The one you don't talk about except to explain what you did wrong raising me. My mother's mask finally cracked. You want to know what we did wrong? We gave you everything. The best schools, every opportunity. And you threw it away for what? To draw pictures on people? To date someone who can barely support himself, who already has baggage? Marcus's hand found my shoulder. His touch was gentle, but I felt the tension in his fingers. Emma had started to cry. Soft little hiccups that broke my heart. Careful, Mom. My voice dropped to something quiet and dangerous. You might want to think very carefully about your next words, but she was too far gone. 3 glasses of champagne and years of suppressed disappointment flooding out. Think carefully? I've watched you waste your potential for years. Watched you parade your mistakes in front of us. That man and his child are not our family. They never will be. The words detonated in the perfect backyard. Mrs. Henderson gasped. Aunt Helen's eyes went wide. David closed his eyes like he could wish it all away. Jessica's crying got louder, and I smiled, because my mother had just said exactly what I'd been waiting for her to say. Had just revealed herself in front of 20 witnesses, had just handed me the final piece I needed. Thank you, I said softly. That's exactly what I needed to hear you say out loud. I reached into my bag and pulled out a manila envelope. My mother's face went from red to white in the span of a heartbeat. She knew what it was. She had to know. We should probably go inside for this part. I held up the envelope. Because this conversation is about to get interesting. And Mom, you're going to want to sit down. My mother's living room had never felt smaller. 20 people crammed into a space designed for elegant cocktail parties, not family warfare. Marcus had taken Emma to the kitchen. She didn't need to see this. My father sat rigid in his leather chair, the one no one else was allowed to use. Jessica perched on the sofa arm, tissue pressed to her face. David stood by the window like he was planning his escape route. My mother remained standing, spine straight as rebar. Sarah, if this is some kind of dramatic gesture, sit down. Barbara, Grandma Rose's voice cut through the room like a scalpel. Every head turned. My grandmother stood in the doorway, 83 years old and more commanding than anyone half her age. She'd let herself in through the side gate, exactly as we'd planned. My mother's face went slack with shock. Mom, what are you doing here? What I should have done 2 years ago. Grandma Rose walked to the center of the room, her cane tapping against the hardwood, watching my daughter destroy this family with her pride. That's not fair, my mother started. Fair? Grandma Rose's laugh was dry as autumn leaves. Let's talk about fair, Barbara. Let's talk about how you've systematically excluded Sarah from family events for 3 years. How you've badmouthed her to anyone who would listen. How you've treated her life choices like personal insults. My father found his voice. Rose, this is between us and Sarah. It stopped being private when you made it public. Grandma Rose pointed at the women clustered near the fireplace. How many times has Barbara told you about her disappointing daughter? How many times has she asked for advice on fixing Sarah? Mrs. Henderson had the decency to look embarrassed. The others suddenly found the carpet fascinating. I opened the manila envelope. Grandma Rose came to me 6 months ago. She'd noticed the pattern too. How I was never in family photos anymore. How my name stopped coming up at Sunday dinners. I pulled out the first document. She asked me to document everything. Every excluded event. Every conversation I overheard. Every message in the secret family chat. Jessica's crying stopped. Sarah, I didn't mean to send that screenshot. I know, but it was the confirmation I needed. I spread papers across the coffee table. Screenshots, dates, times. My mother's Facebook posts with me carefully cropped out. 3 years of evidence. Systematic exclusion. Emotional abuse documented in detail. Abuse? My mother's voice cracked. You're being ridiculous. We're your parents. We can't abuse you by not inviting you to parties. Actually, Grandma Rose said quietly, you can. It's called estrangement tactics. And when paired with public humiliation and reputation damage, it becomes something a court would be very interested in. The room went silent. My father's face had turned gray. Court? I pulled out another document. this one with an official seal. Grandma Rose updated her will 6 months ago. I didn't ask her to, but she saw what was happening and made a choice. My mother's hand went to her throat. What choice? The lake house, Grandma Rose said. The property your father left me, the one worth $1.2 million, the one you've been counting on inheriting, Barbara. The color drained from my mother's face completely. That lake house was her retirement plan, her security blanket, the crown jewel she'd been waiting for. She'd decorated it in her mind 1,000 times. I'm leaving it to Sarah, Grandma Rose continued, along with the trust fund I established in her name, $350,000. Jessica gasped. David's jaw dropped. My father looked like he'd been punched, but my mother's expression transformed into something ugly and desperate. You can't do that. Sarah doesn't deserve— Deserve? Grandma Rose's voice turned to ice. What does Jessica deserve? The daughter who leaked Sarah's private relationship struggles to her book club? What does David deserve? The son who stood by silently while you erased his sister from family history? David flinched. Grandma, I didn't know how to— You knew. You all knew. I kept my voice steady. Every single one of you knew and chose to do nothing. Jessica, you participated. You helped Mom coordinate events specifically when I was working. David, you posted family photos with me cropped out. Dad, you wrote that letter to my landlord trying to get me evicted because you thought homelessness would make me come to my senses. My father stood up so fast his chair rocked. How did you— I have copies. Grandma Rose's lawyer made sure of that. I pulled out another paper. Attempted interference with housing. That's actually illegal in this state, Dad. Harassment. I could press charges. The silence was absolute. Mrs. Henderson was edging toward the door. Aunt Helen's face had gone from eager to horrified. This wasn't the entertainment she'd signed up for. My mother's hands were shaking. This is extortion. No, Grandma Rose said firmly. This is consequences. You spent 3 years trying to punish Sarah for not being who you wanted her to be. You damaged her reputation, isolated her, tried to destroy her relationship. You called her problematic to anyone who would listen. You treated Marcus and Emma like they were beneath you. That man is— my mother started. A decorated veteran with a purple heart. I interrupted. An architect who owns his own firm. A single father raising a daughter after his wife died of cancer. But you never asked about any of that, did you, Mom? You just saw his tattoos and decided he wasn't good enough. Marcus appeared in the doorway. Emma wasn't with him, probably drawing in the kitchen like he'd promised. His face was carefully neutral, but I saw the tension in his shoulders. He'd heard everything. My mother looked at him and something crumbled in her expression. Not shame. She was too proud for that. But recognition, maybe, that she'd miscalculated badly. Sarah, my father said, his voice hoarse. What do you want? Want? I looked at each of them. I wanted a family. I wanted parents who were proud of me. I wanted siblings who had my back. But you made it clear that unless I performed the life you chose for me, I didn't fit the picture. We can fix this, Jessica said desperately. We can start over. I'll delete the chat. We'll include you in everything. You think that fixes 3 years? The words came out harder than I meant. You think adding me to the group chat erases what you said about me? What you let Mom say? David moved closer. Sarah, we were wrong. All of us. We should have stood up for you. Should have. Didn't. I gathered the papers. Here's what's going to happen. Grandma Rose's will stands. The lake house is mine. The trust fund is mine. You don't get to protest it, contest it, or fight it. If you do, these documents go to a lawyer. The harassment charges get filed. And I will make sure everyone in your social circle knows exactly who you really are. My mother made a sound like a wounded animal. You would destroy your own family? You already did that. I met her eyes. I'm just making sure you can't do it to anyone else. Grandma Rose tapped her cane once. I've also revised my estate plan for the rest of my assets. Barbara, you were set to inherit the majority. That's changed. It's now divided equally between all 4 grandchildren, with provisions. Jessica and David, you'll receive your portions in trust, released over time. Sarah receives hers outright, with an additional allowance from my living estate, effective immediately. The numbers were clearly doing mathematics in my mother's head. Her inheritance had just been cut by millions. Jessica was crying again. David looked sick. And the conditions? My father asked quietly. Family therapy, I said. All of us. If you want any relationship with me going forward, we do it with professional help. You don't get to rug sweep this. You don't get to pretend it didn't happen. And if we refuse, my mother's voice was barely a whisper, then you don't have a daughter anymore. You have the lake house you wanted more than you wanted me. You have your reputation. You have your perfect image. I picked up my bag, but you don't have me. And eventually, Grandma Rose won't be here to referee, and you'll be old. And Jessica and David will have learned from your example that family is conditional. That love has terms and conditions. The implications settled over the room like fallout. My mother was looking at her other children, maybe seeing her own future in their faces. Would they exclude her someday? Would they crop her out when she became inconvenient? There's one more thing, Grandma Rose said. Sarah has agreed to give you a choice. She can take the inheritance and walk away forever. Or you can all commit to therapy to actually repairing this family, and she'll consider a relationship. But Sarah gets the final say on terms, not you, Barbara. You lost that privilege when you called her problematic in front of the entire family. Mrs. Henderson had made it to the door. Barbara, I should go. Please do, Grandma Rose said pleasantly, and perhaps consider whether you want to continue being friends with someone who treats her own daughter this way. Tends to say a lot about character. The book club friends filed out like rats fleeing a sinking ship. Aunt Helen followed, not meeting anyone's eyes. Within minutes, only family remained. My mother sank onto the sofa. For the first time in my life, she looked small, defeated. How long have you been planning this? Since the screenshot, I admitted. Before that, I kept hoping you'd change, that you'd realize what you were doing. But that message, don't tell Sarah about Sunday's barbecue, that's when I knew you'd chosen. You picked your image over your daughter. I thought I was protecting the family, she whispered. From what? From me being happy? From me building a life you didn't approve of? I crouched in front of her. Mom, I have a good life. I own my business. I'm engaged to an amazing man. I'm about to be a stepmother to the sweetest kid in the world. None of that was shameful, but you made me feel like it was. Tears finally broke through her composure. Real ones, not performed. I don't know how to fix this. That's what therapy is for. I stood. You have 1 week to decide. Grandma Rose's lawyer has copies of everything. If you try to fight the will, contest the inheritance, or come after me or Marcus in any way, the harassment documentation goes public. Every screenshot, every excluded event, every cruel message. Your reputation will be what mine has been for 3 years. I walked to the door where Marcus waited. Emma peeked around his leg, her drawing clutched in one hand, a picture of our little family, complete with crayon hearts. Sarah, my father called. I turned. He looked older than he had an hour ago. I'm sorry, for all of it, for not protecting you, for the letter, for everything. I know you are, Dad. The question is whether sorry is enough to rebuild what you broke. The week that followed played out in slow motion. My phone exploded with messages. Jessica sending paragraphs of apologies at 3 a.m., David leaving voicemails that oscillated between defensive and desperate. My mother stayed silent. That silence said more than words could. But the community wasn't silent. Mrs. Henderson, it turned out, had a very large mouth. By Wednesday, the story had rippled through the entire country club scene. The women who'd clutched pearls over my situation were now reassessing. Some reached out with carefully worded messages. I had no idea Barbara was treating you that way. Others quietly unfriended my mother on Facebook. The social death my mother had designed for me was becoming hers instead. Marcus found me Thursday evening on our apartment balcony, staring at my phone. Emma was asleep inside, her nightlight casting star patterns on the ceiling. He wrapped his arms around me from behind. Your mom called the shop, he said quietly. My stomach dropped. What did she say? Asked to speak to the owner. Got very quiet when I said that was you. His voice carried something between amusement and anger. She didn't know you'd bought the place. I'd purchased the tattoo parlor 2 years ago when the original owner retired. Used my savings, took a business loan, turned it into the most successful studio in the city. My parents never asked about my work, so they never learned I was a business owner. They still thought I was just an artist renting a chair. What else did she say? Asked if I was taking care of you, if Emma and I were temporary. Marcus's arms tightened. I told her we've been engaged for 4 months, that I bought a ring 8 months ago but waited because I knew her family situation was complicated, that I was planning to ask your father's permission until I learned what he'd done with that letter to your landlord. The letter. My father had written to my previous landlord claiming I was an unfit tenant, hoping financial pressure would force me back to them. It had backfired. The landlord showed me the letter. I reported him to the housing authority, and Marcus offered me the apartment above his daughter's favorite bakery. We'd been neighbors for months before we started dating. She started crying, Marcus continued. Said she didn't know. Didn't know about the business, the engagement, any of it. Said she'd made assumptions. Because she never asked. I told her that too. He turned me to face him. Sarah, you don't have to do this. The therapy, the second chance. You can take the lake house and the money, and we can build our life without them. Emma and I are your family now. I loved him for saying it, for meaning it. But something my grandmother had said kept circling my mind. They taught you that family is conditional. Don't let them teach Emma the same thing. Emma, sweet, careful Emma who watched everything with those old soul eyes, who'd survived losing her mother at 3 and was learning to trust me with the title. Who drew pictures of our family with everyone holding hands? If I walked away completely, what would that teach her about love? About forgiveness? About when to fight for relationships and when to let them go? I need to know I tried, I said finally. Not for them, for me. So I can look at Emma in 20 years and say I didn't give up without trying to fix it. Marcus kissed my forehead. Then we try. But Sarah, the second they hurt you again, we're done. I won't watch them break you twice. Friday afternoon, my grandmother called. They've agreed to therapy, all of them. Barbara took the longest to come around. What changed her mind? A long pause. Helen told everyone at Bridge Club. Barbara's been uninvited from the charity gala. Mrs. Henderson resigned from the planning committee they co-chair. She's experiencing a very small taste of what you lived with for 3 years. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt tired. When does therapy start? Monday. I've arranged for Dr. Sarah Chen. No relation to you. Different spelling. She specializes in family estrangement and reunification. She's reviewed the documentation. She knows the history. Grandma, why are you doing this? You could have just cut them off, given me everything and let them suffer. Because I'm 83 years old, sweetheart, and I've learned that revenge might feel good in the moment, but reconciliation, when possible, feels better at the end. Her voice softened. Your mother is my daughter. I love her. But she needs to understand that love without respect is just control. And you needed to know you have power in this family. Not just money. Real power. Monday came too fast. The therapy office was in a renovated Victorian house, all soft colors and comfortable chairs that were clearly expensive. Dr. Chen was 50-something, calm eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She seated us in a circle, me and Marcus on one side, my parents on another, Jessica and David opposite us. Grandma rose in the middle, referee and witness. Let's establish ground rules, Dr. Chen began. First, Sarah has control of this process. This is about repairing harm done to her. If at any point she wants to stop, we stop. Second, we deal with actions, not intentions. Barbara, Robert, Jessica, David, I don't care if you meant well. We're addressing what you did. Third, everyone speaks for themselves. No we statements. Own your behavior. My father shifted uncomfortably. He wasn't used to being in the hot seat. Sarah, Dr. Chen turned to me. Tell us what you need from today. I'd practiced this. I need them to understand what they did. Not intellectually, not abstractly. I need them to feel what it felt like to be me for 3 years. That's fair. Barbara, let's start with you. Sarah has documentation showing systematic exclusion from family events. Can you explain your reasoning? My mother's hands twisted in her lap. She'd dressed carefully. Tasteful blouse, minimal jewelry, her armor. I thought I was protecting the family image. We have a standing in the community. Expectations. Whose expectations? The club, our friends, business associates. And Sarah violated these expectations how? My mother's eyes flicked to Marcus. Her choices were unconventional. Dr. Chen's expression didn't change. Unconventional meaning? She didn't finish law school. She works in a tattoo parlor. She dates someone who's... She stopped herself. Someone who's what? Dr. Chen prompted. The silence stretched. Marcus sat perfectly still beside me, his jaw tight. Someone who doesn't fit our social circle, my mother finally said. Because of his tattoos? His profession? His daughter? All of it. The words came out in a rush. I know how it sounds. But in our world, these things matter. Image matters. And Sarah was making choices that reflected poorly on the family. Did you ask Sarah about these choices? About why she made them? I tried to guide her toward better ones. That's not what I asked. Did you have conversations with Sarah about her life? Or did you simply decide her choices were wrong? My mother's silence was answer enough. Dr. Chen turned to me. Sarah, when did you realize your family was excluding you? I always suspected. But I had proof when Jessica accidentally sent me a screenshot from their secret chat. My mother telling everyone not to invite me to Easter because I'd bring Marcus. Jessica made a small wounded sound. Dr. Chen held up a hand. We'll get to you, Jessica. Sarah, how did that feel? Like confirmation. Like everything I'd suspected but kept telling myself I was paranoid about was real. They had a whole system set up to erase me. And you, Barbara, you wrote that message. Did you consider how Sarah would feel if she found out? I didn't think she'd find out, my mother said quietly. And I thought if we gave her space, she'd come to her senses. Realize the life she was building wasn't sustainable. The life she was building, Dr. Chen repeated. Tell me what you know about Sarah's actual life. My mother opened her mouth, closed it. She works at a tattoo parlor. Does she own it? Silence. Is she engaged? Longer silence. Do you know what Marcus does for a living? How he and Sarah met? Anything about Emma beyond her age? My mother's face crumpled. No. Because you never asked, I said. The words came out steady. Clinical. In 3 years, you never once asked about my life. You just decided it was wrong and tried to punish me into changing. I thought I was helping. You weren't. My voice got harder. You were trying to control me. And when I wouldn't be controlled, you tried to erase me. You told your friends I was problematic. You cropped me out of photos. Dad wrote to my landlord trying to get me evicted. Jessica coordinated events when I was working so you could claim I was too busy. You systematically destroyed my reputation and isolated me from my family. We didn't mean... David started. Don't. I cut him off. Dr. Chen said intentions don't matter. You did these things, all of you. For 3 years, Dr. Chen let the silence sit. When she finally spoke, her voice was gentle but firm. Barbara, I want you to imagine something. Imagine your mother excludes you from family gatherings because you don't meet her standards. She talks about you to her friends like you're a burden. She tries to sabotage your housing. She treats your husband like he's beneath her. How would that feel? My mother was crying silently. Awful. That's what you did to Sarah for 3 years. I know. The words were barely audible. I know that now. Knowing isn't enough, I said. I need to know why. What about my life was so threatening that you had to destroy our relationship? My mother looked at me, really looked at me, maybe for the first time in years. You weren't supposed to leave. Jessica married into the right family. David joined the country club. You were supposed to marry someone from our circle, become a lawyer, stay close. When you chose differently, it felt like rejection. So you rejected me first. Yes. She closed her eyes. Yes, I did. The admission hung in the air like smoke. My father was crying now too, silent tears tracking down his face. Jessica had her head in her hands. David stared at the floor. The letter to my landlord, I said to my father. That crossed a legal line. Why? His voice was rough. Your mother was falling apart. I thought if we created enough pressure, you'd come home. We could fix things, get you back on track. Back on track, I repeated, like I was broken. Like you were lost, he amended. But I see now that you weren't lost. We were. We'd created this idea of who you should be and couldn't accept who you actually are. Dr. Chen made a note. That's important awareness, Robert. Sarah, do you believe that? I studied my father. He looked smaller than I remembered. Older. I don't know yet. That's honest. Jessica, David, you've been quiet. What's your perspective? Jessica finally looked up. I knew it was wrong. I knew Mom was being cruel, but I was so busy trying to be perfect, trying to meet every expectation, that I didn't have energy to fight for Sarah too. And I'm ashamed of that. You should be, I said flatly. You're my sister. You chose convenience over loyalty. She flinched but nodded. I did, and I'm sorry. David? My brother finally met my eyes. I told myself it wasn't my business, that it was between you and Mom, but that was cowardice. I was protecting my inheritance, my standing. I knew if I stood up for you, I'd become the problem child too. The honesty was unexpected, brutal, but real. So here's where we are, Dr. Chen said. Sarah has been systematically excluded, emotionally abused, and legally harassed by her family for 3 years because she made life choices that didn't align with her mother's social expectations. The question now is whether this is repairable. Sarah, what would repair look like for you? I'd thought about this for days, Weeks, really. I need to see change, not words, actions. I need Mom to understand that I'm not an extension of her image. I'm a person with my own life. I need Dad to admit that letter was illegal and destructive. I need Jessica and David to stop being bystanders. And I need all of you to accept Marcus and Emma. Not tolerate, accept, embrace. Can you do that? Dr. Chen asked the room. My mother wiped her eyes. I want to try. Trying isn't enough, I said. Either you can or you can't. Then yes. Yes, I can. My father nodded. Jessica and David echoed agreement. Okay, Dr. Chen said. Then we have work to do. The therapy sessions became our new routine. Every Monday, sometimes twice a week when things got heavy. Dr. Chen didn't let anyone off easy. She made my mother sit through readings of every message from the secret chat. Made my father write a formal apology letter to my former landlord and copy the housing authority. Made Jessica and David create timelines of every event I was excluded from and explain their reasoning for each one. It was brutal. Necessary. Slowly, something began to shift. Week 3, my mother showed up at the tattoo parlor. Not to lecture, to ask if she could watch me work. She sat quietly for 2 hours while I finished a sleeve for a client, an elaborate phoenix rising from flames. When I was done, she said, "That's art. Real art." Week 5, my father invited Marcus to play golf. Marcus came home bemused. Your dad apologized 14 times, then asked my advice on a renovation project. Turns out he's been following my firm's work for months. He knew who I was the whole time. That hurt worse than the ignorance. He'd known Marcus was successful, talented, respected, and he'd still tried to destroy us. Week 7, Jessica asked to take Emma for an afternoon. I almost said no. Marcus touched my arm. Let her try. They went to a children's museum. Emma came home with a stuffed dinosaur and announced that Aunt Jessica was pretty nice, actually. David was harder. He kept his distance, sending formal texts asking about my availability for family dinners I never attended. It was Grandma Rose who finally cornered him. I don't know what she said, but he showed up at our apartment at midnight, drunk and crying, saying he'd been a coward and he'd spend the rest of his life making up for it if I'd let him. I made him coffee and let him sleep on our couch. But my mother was the real battleground. She fought every change, every challenge to her worldview. Session after session, she circled back to the same defense. I thought I was protecting you. Week 9, Dr. Chen finally snapped. From what, Barbara? From happiness? From love? From building a life on her own terms? From making mistakes, my mother shot back. I've seen girls like her. Alternative lifestyles, unconventional choices. They always end up struggling. Alone. I didn't want that for Sarah. Girls like her? I repeated slowly. You mean girls who don't perform for you? Girls who rebel for the sake of rebelling. I didn't rebel, Mom. I just lived. I chose a career I love, a man who treats me well, a child who needed a mother figure. Where's the rebellion in that? She had no answer, but something in her face started to crack. The careful mask she wore for the world began to slip, revealing something raw underneath. Fear, maybe. The terror that if her children didn't follow her script, she'd lose control of the narrative entirely. Week 12 brought the breakthrough, or the breaking point, depending on perspective. Dr. Chen assigned homework, family dinner at my apartment, non-negotiable. My parents, siblings, Grandma Rose, Marcus, and Emma. Everyone in our space, playing by our rules. I cooked. Marcus helped. Emma set the table with exaggerated care, placing name cards she'd made herself. My mother arrived 15 minutes early, clutching a bouquet of flowers like a shield. My father carried wine, the expensive kind he saved for important occasions. Jessica and David came together, safety in numbers. We sat down to eat. Conversation was stilted at first, everyone hyper-aware of the minefield we were navigating. Then Emma, bless her, asked my mother to tell her about the lake house. The lake house? My mother looked startled. Sarah says we're going there this summer. She says there's a dock and I can learn to fish. My mother's face did something complicated. You're taking her to the lake house? It's mine now, I reminded her. And yes, Emma's never been to a lake. Marcus is teaching her to swim. I used to teach Sarah to swim there, my mother said softly. Every summer, she was so fearless in the water. The memory hit me sideways. I'd forgotten. Long afternoons in the lake, my mother patient and encouraging, before expectations calcified into demands, before I became the problematic one. I remember, I said. Dinner continued. Stories emerged. David told Emma about the treehouse our grandfather built. Jessica described the hiking trails, My father explained the best fishing spots. And slowly, the apartment filled with something I hadn't felt in years around my family. Ease. After dessert, Emma climbed into my mother's lap. Just did it, with the casual confidence of a child who doesn't yet understand complicated adult dynamics. My mother froze. Then her arms came up hesitantly and wrapped around Emma. "You're pretty," Emma announced. My mother's eyes filled. "So are you, sweetheart. Sarah says you're sad, that you miss her. Is that true?" Out of the mouths of babes, everyone held their breath. "Yes," my mother whispered. "I've missed her very much." "Then why didn't you just say so?" Emma's logic was unassailable. "When I miss people, I tell them. Then we hug and it's better." My mother looked at me over Emma's head. "Can it be that simple?" "No," I said honestly, "but it's a start." After everyone left, Marcus found me on the balcony again. That was hard. Necessary hard or damaging hard, time will tell. He pulled me close. "But Sarah, watching Emma with your mom, seeing her soften, that was something." It was. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we were building on a foundation that hadn't been properly repaired, just patched over with good intentions and therapy homework. The test came 2 weeks later. Marcus's firm was hosting a gallery opening. His architectural designs displayed alongside the artists they'd collaborated with. A big deal. Important clients, industry press, the mayor. He'd been planning it for months. I invited my family, all of them. My mother hesitated. "Will there be many people?" "About 200. "And you're sure we'd be welcome?" "Marcus wants you there. This is important to him, to us." "What should I wear?" The question was so typical, so Barbara, that I almost laughed. "Mom, wear whatever makes you comfortable. It's an art gallery, not a country club gala." She showed up in a simple black dress. Elegant, but understated. My father wore a suit without the tie. They looked nervous, out of place in the industrial chic space with its exposed brick and modern sculptures. Then Mrs. Henderson walked in. My mother saw her at the same moment, the woman who'd spread the story, who'd uninvited my mother from the charity gala, who'd turned the country club against her. Mrs. Henderson saw my mother and went pale. This was it. The moment where my mother could choose, retreat into old patterns, or prove the therapy was real. She walked straight up to Mrs. Henderson. "I owe you an apology," my mother said clearly. "For years, I spoke poorly about my daughter. You were kind enough to listen, but I was wrong. About everything. Sarah has built something remarkable, and I'm ashamed of how I treated her." Mrs. Henderson's mouth opened, closed. "Barbara, Please don't. I'm not looking for absolution. I just wanted you to know that you won't hear me disparage my daughter again. She's talented, successful, and happy. Everything a mother should want." Then my mother walked away, found me in the crowd, and said, "Show me Marcus's work. I want to understand what he does." I took her through the gallery, explained each project, the vision behind it, the challenges Marcus had overcome. She listened. Actually listened. Asked questions. Complimented his use of light and space. When we reached the centerpiece, a stunning design for a children's hospital wing, complete with Emma's input on the playroom spaces, my mother stopped. "He let her contribute," she said softly. "She's his daughter. Of course he values her ideas." "I never asked for your ideas. I just told you how things should be." The admission hung between us. Raw. True. "No," I agreed. "You didn't." "I'd like to start," she said, "if you'll let me." 3 months after the gallery opening, things had settled into a new normal. Not perfect, still fragile, but real. My parents came to dinner every other week. Jessica babysat Emma regularly. David and Marcus had started a tradition of weekend basketball games. Grandma Rose watched it all with satisfaction, her faith in reconciliation validated. But I should have known it was too easy. The call came on a Wednesday. Jessica's voice was shaking. "Sarah, you need to come to Mom and Dad's house. Now." "What happened?" "Just come, please." I found them in the living room. My parents, Jessica, David, and 3 other people I didn't recognize. A man in an expensive suit, a woman with a leather portfolio, and Mrs. Henderson. My stomach dropped. "What's going on?" The man in the suit stood. "Ms. Mitchell, I'm Stuart Grayson. I represent the Riverside Country Club Board." Everything clicked into place. The country club, my mother's entire social world, the foundation of her identity. "Mom, what did you do?" But it was Mrs. Henderson who spoke. "Your mother defended you at the membership review committee," rather forcefully. "There was an anonymous complaint. the lawyer explained, about your family's suitability for membership, specifically citing your mother's public scene at the barbecue and concerns about family members with unsavory associations. He looked uncomfortable. The complaint specifically mentioned your fiancé's tattoos and single father status. White-hot rage flooded through me. Someone complained about Marcus. The complaint suggested the Mitchell family no longer represented the club's values, the woman with the portfolio said. She looked sympathetic. We're required to review all membership concerns. Your mother was invited to respond. And she did, Mrs. Henderson said. She told the entire board that if having compassion for her daughter and respecting her daughter's choices made her unsuitable for membership, then the club's values were bankrupt. I looked at my mother. She was sitting very straight, hands folded in her lap, terrified but defiant. She resigned on the spot, my father said quietly. 42 years of membership. She walked away. The room spun. That country club was everything to my mother. Every friend, every social connection, every piece of her identity was tied to it. The board rejected her resignation, the lawyer continued, and we've come to offer a formal apology. The complaint was filed by Helen Morrison. Aunt Helen, of course. Helen was voted off the board this morning, Mrs. Henderson said. By unanimous decision. Your mother's defense of you was recorded in the minutes. Several board members were moved to tears. Barbara's membership is not only secure, but she's been asked to join the ethics committee. My mother hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, just sat there, watching me process what she'd done. She'd chosen me over them. Publicly. Permanently. I don't understand, I said. You love that club. I loved the idea of it, my mother said finally. The status, the belonging. But watching those people sit in judgment, talking about you and Marcus like you were beneath them, calling Emma's existence an unsuitable association. Her voice hardened. I realized I'd become them. I'd treated you exactly the way they were treating you now, and I was disgusted with myself. So you quit. I told them that my daughter owns a successful business, that she's engaged to a decorated veteran and gifted architect, that she's raising a child with more grace and patience than I ever showed, and that if they found that unsuitable, they could take their membership and… She stopped herself. Well, I was less diplomatic than that. David was grinning. Mom told them to shove it. Actual quote. Mrs. Henderson almost fainted. I did not almost faint, Mrs. Henderson protested. But it was quite something. The lawyer cleared his throat. Ms. Mitchell, we'd like to extend a membership offer to you and your fiancé. Complimentary for the first year. The board feels it would send an important message about the club's evolving values. Absolutely not. The words came out flat. You only want Marcus and me now because my mother embarrassed you. That's not evolution. That's damage control. Sarah, my mother started. No, Mom. They don't get to exclude us for years, then offer membership when it's convenient. I looked at each board member. You made your values clear. I don't want to join a club that would reject Marcus based on his appearance or question Emma's worth because her dad is raising her alone. Well said. Grandma Rose's voice came from the doorway. None of us had heard her come in. Stuart, you can tell the board that the Mitchell family appreciates the gesture but declines, and you can tell Helen that her membership fee donation to the family scholarship fund has been rejected. We don't want her money. The board members left. Mrs. Henderson lingered. Barbara, for what it's worth, I'm proud of you. What you did took courage. After she left, silence filled the room. My mother was crying silently, not performed tears, real ones. I thought you'd be angry, she finally said. I am angry. But not at you. At them. At a system that judged Marcus without knowing him. That called Emma unsuitable. I sat down next to her. You walked away from everything for me. Not everything. I walked away from people who made me choose between their approval and my daughter. That's not a real choice. My father put his hand on her shoulder. She's been scared for weeks. Ever since the complaint was filed. Kept saying she'd already lost 3 years with you. She wasn't losing more. The therapy worked, Jessica said softly. Dr. Chen kept asking Mom what she valued more, her image or her family. She finally had to answer. David nodded. And she answered right. I looked at my mother. Really looked at her. The woman who'd excluded me from Easter. Who'd called me problematic to anyone who'd listen. Who'd systematically erased me from family photos. That woman was gone. Or at least she was trying to be. I'm still hurt, I said honestly. 3 years doesn't disappear because of one grand gesture. I know, my mother took my hand, but I'm done making you prove you're worthy of my love. You were always worthy. I was just too blind to see it. Grandma Rose moved into the room. Now comes the hard part. Not the dramatic gestures, the daily choice to be better, to see Sarah as she is, not as you want her to be. I can do that, my mother said. Can you? When people at the grocery store ask why you're not at the club anymore, when old friends stop calling, when you lose the social standing you've built your entire adult life around? My mother's face was resolute. I can do that. I will do that. Because the alternative is losing Sarah again, and I'm done losing my daughter. The doorbell rang. Marcus and Emma. They'd come to pick me up for dinner. Emma burst into the room, all energy and joy, went straight to my mother. We're having pizza. Do you want to come? My mother looked at me. I nodded. I'd love to, she said. At the pizza place, Emma chattered nonstop about her day. My parents listened, actually engaged. Marcus and my father talked about a project. Jessica helped Emma color on the paper tablecloths. David stole pieces of pepperoni and made Emma giggle. It looked like a family. Messy and imperfect and real. On the way home, Emma fell asleep in her car seat. Marcus glanced at me. Your mom was different tonight. She quit the country club. For me. I heard that must have cost her. Everything, probably. That club was her entire social world. Then she's braver than I gave her credit for. He paused. Does this change things for you? I don't know yet. One good choice doesn't erase 3 years of bad ones, but it's a start. Fair. He reached over, took my hand. Just remember, you don't owe them forgiveness just because they're finally trying. You get to set the pace. I know. But Marcus, part of me wants to try, to see if we can actually repair this. Then we try, together. The next morning, a delivery arrived. A package addressed to me. Inside, a photo album. My mother's handwriting on the first page. What I should have seen. Every page was filled. Pictures of me at the tattoo parlor. Clearly taken from social media I didn't know she'd been following. Articles about my business from local magazines. A copy of Marcus's architectural award. Emma's school photos. Screenshots of positive reviews of my work. She'd been paying attention. Even while excluding me, she'd been watching. Learning who I actually was. The last page held a new photo. From the gallery opening. My mother and me, standing in front of Marcus's hospital design. We were both smiling. Really smiling. Under it, she'd written, I'm proud of you. I should have said it sooner, I should have said it always. But I'm saying it now, and I'll keep saying it until you believe it. I called her. She answered on the first ring. Did you get, I got it. Mom, this is not enough, I know, but it's a start. We stayed on the phone for an hour, talking, really talking, about the business, about Marcus, about Emma, about the 3 years we'd lost and the future we might rebuild. When I hung up, Marcus was watching me. How do you feel? Hopeful, I admitted, cautiously, but hopeful. A year later, Emma's 6th birthday party at the lake house brought everyone together. My parents had helped renovate the dock. Jessica taught Emma to fish. David built a new treehouse with Marcus. Grandma Rose watched from the porch, queen of her domain. My mother brought out a cake she'd made herself. Not as good as a bakery, she warned, but I wanted to try. It was lopsided and the frosting was uneven. Emma declared it perfect. As the sun set over the water, my mother found me on the dock. We sat in silence, watching Emma catch fireflies with Jessica. I saw Helen at the grocery store last week, she said finally. And she asked if I regretted it, giving up my standing for you. What did you tell her? That I regret the 3 years I wasted trying to control you, but walking away from people who made me choose? That I don't regret at all. I leaned against her shoulder. It felt natural now, easy. We'd done the work. Brutal, painful therapy sessions, difficult conversations, moments where we backslid and had to start over. But we'd done it. I'm getting married in the fall, I said. We set a date. Here at the lake, if that's okay. It's your lake house, she smiled. But yes, I'd love that. Will you help me plan it? She turned to look at me, eyes bright. Really? Really, I want you there. Involved. Part of it. I'd be honored. She paused. Sarah, I know I can never get those 3 years back. Never undo the damage I caused. But I promise you, for the rest of my life, I will choose you. Every time. I know, Mom. And I did, because she'd proven it. Not with words, but with actions. Walking away from the country club, defending Marcus to anyone who questioned him, showing up to every family dinner, learning Emma's favorite books, asking about my work, being present. Marcus joined us on the dock. Emma wants you both to see the treehouse before it gets too dark. We walked up together, my mother, Marcus, and me. Found Emma inside the treehouse, David teaching her to use a level. Jessica adding glow-in-the-dark stars to the ceiling. My father was on the ground, steadying the ladder. "Come up. There's room for everyone." We climbed up. All of us crowded into that small wooden structure. Emma in the middle, the sun of our rebuilt solar system. And for the first time in 4 years, we took a family photo, all of us together. That photo sits on my desk now. Next to it, the one from my mother's album, her and me at the gallery, a before and after. Evidence that families can break. And sometimes, with enough work and willingness to change, they can heal. 6 months after the wedding, my mother called with news. She joined the board of a local nonprofit supporting single parents. I've been talking to Marcus about the challenges he faced after his wife died, the judgment, the assumptions. I want to do something about it. She'd found her purpose, not in maintaining an image, but in making space for people who didn't fit traditional molds. Jessica finished her psychology degree and started working with Dr. Chen, specializing in family estrangement. "Someone should help other families before it gets as bad as ours did," she said. David opened a scholarship fund in Grandma Rose's name for first-generation college students. "For kids whose families don't understand their choices," he told me, "so they don't have to choose between education and belonging. My parents sold their showcase house and bought something smaller. We don't need to impress anyone anymore," my father explained. "We need space for family dinners." The tattoo parlor expanded. I hired 2 more artists, including a woman who'd been excluded from her religious family for her career choice. My mother came to the grand opening, stayed the whole day, watched me work with pride in her eyes that I'd spent years craving. Emma started calling my parents Grandma and Grandpa. Not because we pushed it, but because it felt right to her. My mother cried the first time. Good tears. Healing tears. And me? I built the life I wanted. Married Marcus in front of the people who mattered. Adopted Emma officially. Papers signed with my mother as a witness. Ran my business. Created art. Loved my messy, rebuilt family. Sometimes people ask if I regret how things went. If I wish I'd handled it differently. My answer is always the same. I regret that it took 3 years and a legal intervention to get my family's attention. I regret the pain, the exclusion, the damage, but I don't regret fighting back. I don't regret documenting everything. I don't regret using Grandma Rose's will to force the confrontation, because that confrontation saved us. It broke down the walls my mother had built around herself and forced everyone to face what they'd done. Would therapy have worked without the leverage? Without the inheritance hanging in the balance? I honestly don't know. But I do know this. Sometimes love means setting boundaries. Sometimes it means forcing people to choose. Sometimes it means burning down the old structure so something healthier can grow. My mother learned that image is empty without substance. That control is not the same as connection. That love means accepting people as they are, not as you wish they'd be. My father learned to value integrity over reputation, to protect his children even when it costs him socially, to build relationships on honesty instead of expectations. Jessica and David learned that silence in the face of injustice makes you complicit. That family loyalty means standing up, not standing by. And I learned that I'm stronger than I thought. That I could set terms and hold them. That I deserved better treatment and could demand it. That walking away was always an option, but sometimes fighting for repair was worth it. Grandma Rose died peacefully at 85, surrounded by her family. At her funeral, my mother gave the eulogy. She talked about unconditional love, about second chances, about how her mother taught her, even in the end, that it's never too late to choose differently. My mother saved this family, she told the assembled guests, not with her money, though that helped, but by refusing to let us stay broken, by believing we could be better, by loving us enough to hold us accountable. The lake house is full now. Every holiday, every summer, my parents, Marcus and me, Emma and the baby we're expecting, Jessica and her partner, David and his growing family. We're messy and loud, and sometimes we still stumble over old wounds, but we're here, together, real, and that's worth everything.